what I want to do now is I absolutely want to introduce who's going to be our speaker today. He's going to speak for about 10 minutes. Coach Cabral Huff. He is the head boys basketball coach at Holy Innocents Episcopal School down in Atlanta, Georgia. He is going to set the table for us when it comes to late game situations, which I'm excited about. I've never met Coach Huff in person, but he has been a loyal virtual coaches roundtable attendee. He gives outstanding feedback during our sessions. I've enjoyed getting to know him over the last couple of weeks on more of a personal level. But after last week, we spoke on the phone. I said, hey, you want to do this next week? I think you'd be great. Reason being is he won a state championship at St. Francis High School in Alpharetta, Georgia. He's a former Division I assistant basketball coach. He's co-host of the Love of the Game podcast and a great Twitter follow, I might add, as well. So, Coach Huff, I'm excited to have you speak for about 10 minutes. If I was anybody watching this, I'd be having your notebooks out because this is going to be good. The floor is yours, Coach Huff. It's all you, man.
Well, I appreciate it, Richie, for the kind words. And hopefully what I can share today can definitely help someone. And so, obviously, as Richie said, my name is Cabral Huff. Organization and late game situations is what I want to talk about today. I've been blessed to have a myriad of jobs and to do a lot of things. And as the picture shows there, that was when I was able to win a state championship at St. Francis High School in Alpharetta, Georgia. And so after being there, I was blessed to work at Georgia Southern in Statesboro, Georgia as the director of basketball operations. I then moved on to Alcorn State, where I was a recruiting coordinator, assistant coach there. And then I came back home to Georgia, where I was the head coach of Duluth High School for 3 years. We had the best 3-year span they had ever had in school history, going to the state tournament all 3 years with 2 Sweet 16s. And then this last year, definitely blessed to work at Holy Innocents Episcopal School, where we went to the Elite Eight this past year. If anybody has heard me speak before or talk to me, I truly believe this right here. I believe the best programs create daily wins within their program, and daily wins allow teams to see success. So even before you can get to the late game situations, you've got to be able to create daily wins in your program. And I truly believe that you do that through organization. And organization starts with being thorough and detailed in what you do, keeping detailed records of your past practices, game film, player transcripts, program budget, whatever it is. And you've got to have all that information easily accessible. Because I know as a former college coach, there's nothing more that we hated than going into a gym and we can't get a player's transcript, or asking the coach and we can't get their film. And then it also makes sure it makes all your coaches are organized and informed and engaged. And then detailed practice plans, they make the world go round. And that's leading me to my next step with practice planning. Like, you can't have late game situations or knowing what to do with them if you don't have a practice plan. Whatever that practice plan may look like for you, but you've got to have a detailed skeleton for that daily practice. I believe it's essential to running an organized and efficient practice. It allows everyone on your staff, especially your assistants, to be the best that they can be in practice because they know what's going on at all times. Every coach has their own philosophy. While some are flexible with their practice plan, others want to stay on that drill till they get it right. And some will move on and allocate more time the next day if something is not done right. Gave you 2 examples here. Dean Smith usually kind of stayed on exactly with his plan every day. And I know it's football, but I take a lot from football because I think we can. Nick Saban will stay with a drill until he gets it right. I've kind of heard from Dustin Kearns. He's the same kind of way. He's going to stay on that drill till he gets it right. So what I did here is that I kind of gave you a practice plan, one of ours, and this is just day 10. This is early in the season for us. And if you go to the very bottom, I know it's small, it may be kind of small for you, but hopefully you can see it. If you see at the very bottom is that we try to have some time and score situations that we work on every week, preferably every day if we can get to it, but definitely every other day. And I can be the first to admit, when you take over a new program, sometimes getting to time and score situations is the last thing that you're able to get to because you're trying to implement culture, you're trying to implement your plays, you're trying to get everything right. But those time and score situations are very, very important. Like, for instance, on this one, it may say you have a 1-point lead with 30 seconds remaining. You have the ball 1 timeout. Like, that's big for us here in Georgia. We don't have a shot clock. So what are you going to do? What are you going to run? What's the personnel you're going to put on the floor? I'll go down to even the fifth one. You're down 3 points with 30 seconds remaining. One timeout, you have the ball. Are you trying to go ahead and shoot the three then? Are you trying to get an easy bucket and then begin fouling? So you've got to have these actions and these plans, not only in your mind of yourself and your coaches, but your players got to understand what they need to do in these situations as well. And then lastly, before I get to some clips, you've got to have a vision, and you must work ahead to make that vision happen. I learned this from the college game, working for Mark Byington and Montez Robinson. You got to be able to be detailed and organized, especially at the college game, because every detail matters. When I was at Alcorn State, we ended up losing to Jackson State at home because we hadn't worked on how to foul, when to foul, and we were up 3 on the last possession. They hit a game-time 3, and we ended up losing in overtime. But I know it's not a late game situation, but we were organized and detailed later on in the season where we beat Southern because we knew their point guard, who was their best player, shot 18% from 3, and then we went under every pick and roll and every ball screen. So you are responsible for everything that happens on and off the court, and you must be organized to keep it together. I'm a firm believer in this last thing. Preparation and organization are directly related. You cannot have or be one without the other. And so that leads me into some clips. Here's one. So a lot of times we get into situations where, it's a late game situation. What are you going to do when you're up 3? So this is a situation for us. We were up 3.5 seconds left. It's a baseline out of bounds situation for the other team. I'll tell you why we decided to do what we did after the clip plays. But this is an example of a late game situation. So on that one, we got lucky. We were able to tip the ball out of bounds. They didn't get an opportunity to even get a shot up. And we weren't actually going to foul in that situation. We were going to play it out because our scouting report said they weren't great three-point shooters, and we were going to switch everything and we were going to match up. Now, doesn't mean that we were wrong or we were right. It just means that was what we were going to do in that situation based off a baseline out of bounds situation. Now, obviously, it's still going to be their ball here. So I'm going to take you to what happened next in this situation. So now it's 1.0 seconds left, up 3, baseline out of bounds. Now, I know a lot of people say this is a perfect opportunity to foul right here because now you're putting them on the free throw line if they're winning the bonus, which they were in this game. And now they're probably going to try to make one and then miss the second one. But they were a bigger team than us. They had about 3 6'6" to 6'8" kids. But I didn't want to try to get that, to try to chance that. So you can see what we did in the situation, and I'll tell you afterwards what I thought about it. So they were able to get up a shot on us, and it was a fairly good look, unfortunately, as our guy kind of came out and closed out late. So I think we dodged a bullet on that. Not saying we hadn't worked on it. I just think we dodged a bullet based off what we were trying to do. Here's another one. This is a great one, a great late game situation. So in this situation, the other team is shooting the second end of 1-and-1. We're down 1. We have 1 timeout, 4.9 seconds left in the game. What are we going to do right here is the question. And what you got to think about as a coach is, are you going to call an immediate timeout and then have to go full court? Are you going to let your players go? What are you going to do right here? I'm going to let it play, and I'm going to explain why we did that. So we ended up losing that game. And I didn't call a timeout because you don't get to advance the ball in high school. I didn't feel we had the best personnel based off where we were at that particular time to run what we wanted sideline out of bounds. If we had got it across half court with limited time, and our best player got the ball in his hand going downhill. Now, I wish he would have went to the rim. I wish he would have, tried to attack the basket, get a bucket, or maybe even draw a foul. He decided to do a step back 3. It was a learning situation for us. We learned from that as we went down the stretch of the season. But we lost it. I even went into the locker room with them, and I told the kids so they wouldn't feel upset with themselves to blame it on me, because I was the one that chose not to call a timeout in that situation. And then my last clip that I'll show you is the exact one that we had at Alcorn State. We're up 3 with 7.2 seconds left. And we decided not to foul here. And again, what you're going to see is that this is why sometimes when you don't foul, no matter what the play is, sometimes miraculous things can happen. And that 3 right there tied the game and sent it to overtime. It wasn't a play. I mean, it was not even a good shot. I mean, my guy was directly in his face, and he had to make a tough shot. So these are things that you have to look at when you are doing late game situations and putting yourself and your team and your coaches in all these kind of situations so you can be better. You can practice them all. It doesn't mean that exact situation is going to happen. But the more times you practice it, the better your team and the better your staff will be. I hope this helps someone today, and I'll turn it back over to Rich.
Getting back to the question I asked beforehand, before the big meeting ended, about how officiating impacts your decision-making, say late in the game when you're trying to press, getting ticky-tack calls, does that, impact your decision-making? How do you handle it? How do you speak with officials?
It actually does impact. You've got to kind of, as the game goes on, kind of understand, what type of officials you have that day. Are they going to allow you to play, or are they going to call that foul right away? Like we're talking about late game situations, so you've got to kind of understand, like, say you wanted to foul if you're up 3. Well, what if they're not going to call it right away because they're going to kind of let a little physicality go? So you got to kind of understand what goes on with the officials you have, and hopefully your assistants, or if you are assistant, that's something you can relate to your head coach. Hey, coach, they've been calling it tight all game, so if we really attack the rim, I know Richie and our group, we kind of talked about what we're going to do if we were up, or we were down 3 with 10 seconds left. If we really attack the rim and they've been calling it tight anyway, we may get an and one, based off of how the officials have been calling the game. So, yes, it does play an impact. Say you're up 1 and they've got to go full court, and you, like you said, you're a pressing team, but those officials are playing it tight. You may want to either tell your kids, back off just a little, but I know you're aggressive, but you just got to kind of play it by ear with those officials. What's going on, David?
So you've had a Division I experience, and you're at a high school level. But how has your philosophy changed in late game situations from that high of a level to the high school route?
I think we talked about it a little bit in our session with Richie. It's changed a little bit because it's not so much of a late game situation, but late clock situations. You deal with a lot of that at Division I level or Division II, whatever. We don't have a shot clock here in Georgia, so I don't have to worry about a late clock situation. But if you're talking about a late game situation, there are just different things that happen in high school and college, whether it's, like I think we talked about the hash mark. We talked about, in high school here in Georgia, if they scored 5 seconds or under, we don't have to take the ball back out, so it doesn't matter. So those are some things that have kind of changed, whether it's my thought pattern or what we do. Like I said, when I showed the clip earlier, when we were playing the Paideia school and we were up 3, baseline out of bounds situation, what are we going to do? Probably a lot of people would have fouled there, but I thought that with their size, they could have tipped it back out to get a 3. And I didn't want to give them that opportunity to do that. So we just played it straight up. So that's probably something different that probably wouldn't have happened at the college level. They probably would have fouled off that baseline out of bounds situation. Some people would have. A lot of people would.
Coach Huff.
Yes.
Jeff Mallory here.
How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing well. You coached at Alcorn, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Montez is my cousin.
Okay.
I hope and pray you learned a lot.
I did.
How have you changed what you all did at Alcorn? Because like I said, me and him would talk about stuff you all did compared to where you're at now. How much have that changed?
I can tell you right now, he's the first person that got me into ball screen continuity, which is something we still run right now. And probably the biggest thing that changed was the amount of time. Like, we put a lot of time in the gym when I was at St. Francis.
Okay.
But because of different constraints we had at Alcorn, being at a HBCU, like, I remember having to work kids out at 7 a.m. in the morning. And so when I got back to high school, it became a staple for us to get in the gym early in the morning. And I think that's just something different, that it showed my players that I was committed. It showed how committed they were. And it got us a chance to get better. We kind of called it Breakfast Club. I mean, Coach Anderson was a big part of that, with me when I was at Duluth, and even this year at Holy Innocents. Getting guys up, we were in the gym this year at 6:30 in the morning, with skill development. And school starts at 8:15, so we do an hour, and then they get out. They can go shower, and they can go, and they go to school. But I think that's a big thing that kind of changed with Montez, because when I was at Georgia Southern, we had a lot more freedom. You got 2 gyms, you got practice gym. You can go do this here. You can schedule it out the way you want to. But at Alcorn, we didn't have that, because they had PE classes in the gym too. So we had to work around all that. So it made me more organized and allowed us to utilize all the time that we had.
Coach, do you always practice late game situations with the same core, like lineup, either offensively or defensively, or do you change that up?
We switch it up. It's funny you just asked that, because I was thinking when we were talking about this, and I kind of got this from a coach. What it is that you've got to come up with, I call it special teams. I told you I take a lot from football. So you got to come up with special teams. Well, what's your best 3-point lineup? What's your best free throw lineup? What's your best pressing lineup? What's your best lineup if you want to run this defense to try to get a stop? And so with that in mind, we try to work on those things. And a lot of times, I forgot who said it, I try to let my assistant coaches get one team. Coach Strider's on here. He was one of my assistant coaches at one time. And he was like a really good defensive coach. So I would allow him to really control that defense. And I'm trying to score on him, and we're down 1 or we're down 2, or maybe we need 3.
I've got a scenario for you.
Okay.
You're down 3. You're at the free throw line. 5 seconds to go. Are you going to miss the second free throw, or are you going to make both and try and press them? You got it. Let's say you have 1 timeout. We'll give you 1 timeout.
It's funny, because that's a scenario we worked on this year. One of my assistants was teaching our guys how we would do that and get a rebound and tip it out, or get a rebound period off of it. So we would try to miss the second one. The problem with that is you've got to work on missing the second one. I think a lot of people think that's easy, just to miss the second free throw. I think you've got to spend time on actually having, your kids miss that free throw. How do you want to miss it? To allow the opportunity to get the ball. So that was one of the big things that, or at least what I would do, or what we worked on a lot this year.
How much time do you think that you would? 8 seconds. What was it? 6, 7 seconds, 8 seconds.
You can knock it down to about 3, to be honest with you, if you can get a tip out, depending on what you want. So you just got to kind of work on it and see. And it depends on what's the score. Are you down 3, or, and were you down 2? So a putback, it kind of just depends on what the situation was.
Can I chime in on that one too, Huff, as far as your philosophy?
Yeah.
I remember with missing, you used to tell us to miss, try to get them to miss off the front of the rim. Try to hit the front of the rim really hard. And once they miss it, it'll ricochet. And you can kind of send your guards to the corner, get it, try to shoot that 3 if you're down 3.
Coach, I got one more question for you. Late game scenario stuff. Are you have you practiced everything, or are you drawing stuff up on the fly with your players? Has that changed through the years, or?
That's It's funny. Every time I get on this Zoom, one of my guys says, "You know what? Everybody always says that's a great question when somebody asks it, but that's really a great question." I have early on in my career, I was always a person that said, "Man, you cannot draw things up on the fly or they won't get it." And it's funny because Coach Anderson's on here, and 2 years ago, I saw something and I wrote it down. And I said, I don't know if we're ever gonna need it, but I put it in the back of my mind. I wrote it on my desk. And Coach Anderson, we worked at the same school, and so the class I was in, I was there till 12 p.m. and he would come in and follow me, and I left it on my desk. And he didn't know I was thinking about it. He just saw it and said, I wonder why he's gonna run, if we're gonna ever get a chance to run this. This is kind of weird. It just so happened in the region tournament game, we got to that situation versus Collins Hill where we had to run it. And I had never talked to the team about it. And we drew it up and they ran it correctly, and we got a layup to win the game to go to the state tournament. So I've definitely changed in that aspect, man. Like, I think you got to know it, but if you've worked on different situations and your guys have worked on being really bought into that huddle, you can kind of change. You can try to get them to run something that maybe they haven't run before in a situation that you may need.
Yeah, Coach Huff, I had something to ask.
Yes.
I have like a super fiery personality. You know, I started coaching 24 years old, so I wanted to win everything. I wanted to destroy everybody. And I know my players fed off of that kind of energy, and I felt like it hurt at times. So I've learned to kind of just be a little bit more reserved. But I've also felt like when we're pressing or we need to be aggressive, I can get guys' motors going more. Is that something that you intentionally do? Do you kind of let the flow of the game and the emotions kind of put you in that position? Or are you kind of meticulous about it and you play it as a game?
I'm more meticulous, and what I mean by that is that our practices are probably the most intense thing, and which puts our players in position when we get to the game. I want them to, no matter what the situation that we go into a game, that they remain level-headed. No matter what happens in that game, they remain level-headed. And I think it's been beneficial for us. You know, I told Richie in our group, probably the one thing I didn't put in my presentation was the year we won the state championship at St. Francis, we were down 8 with 2 minutes left to play with no shot clock in Georgia. And I was honest. I called a timeout and I looked up at the clock and I said, we're not going to the Final Four because it was an Elite Eight game. And we had lost the state championship the year before. So obviously our whole motivation was we're going to get back and win it. And you're down 8 with 2 minutes left. That can be a death knell in high school basketball without a shot clock. But by being meticulous in our practice, by working on all those things with intensity, with preparation, with organization, we were able to execute the game plan to come back and win. You know, we didn't come back. We didn't come back and start jacking threes. You know, we attacked the rim. We fouled. They happened to miss free throws. Even guys that normally didn't miss free throws missed them. And you know, last play of the game, it's a sideline out of bounds. And you know, I've told the guys I was blessed to coach 3 NBA dudes on that team. Kobe Simmons, Kaiser Gates, and Malik Beasley. And then I had another guy who was 6'9", who started 3 of the 4 years at Coastal Carolina. And I had one guy who didn't even go to play college basketball at all at any level. So they hugged up on all 4 of them, and they didn't do anything to him but let him drive to his strong hand and get to the rim. And we were down 1. He got the layup in the and 1, and we win the game by 2. And we win the state championship after that. So I think you got to make sure you remain even keeled in every situation. That's just me. Because I think if you get real fiery all the time, then sometimes that can lead to your team getting some unnecessary technicals or getting real emotional at certain times in the game. Now, I say all that, and Coach Stroud down there is one of the most emotional guys I've ever been around.
Yeah.
And he worked for me, but he's done a great job with his team at Druid Hills. They went to the state tournament in his first year as a head coach, and I'm really big on helping my assistants get them where they want to be and becoming head coaches.